Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers and then start our Wednesday class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhuvaswa, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat, Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, मृत्युर्मामृतं गम्य ओम सहनावतु सहनवनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहि तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहि ओम शांति 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 ओम. The sages have divided the vast range of spiritual practices into three main categories. One set of practices helps us live a happy and healthy life while we are living in this world, because that's very important too. Happy and healthy life. Another set ensures a graceful departure, the acquisition of heavenly delights, which is called swarga, but then coming back to this world to complete our spiritual journey. And the third and the highest set of practices consist of techniques that enables us to transcend earth as well as heaven altogether by freeing ourselves from the cycle of death and life. And the term for that is moksha or mukti or liberation, freedom. In Kathopanishad, which is the story of Nachiketa's journey to liberation, gives a beautiful description of the vast range of spiritual practices in these three categories. The essence of Nachiketa's story is that achieving liberation is like climbing a mountain. The only way to reach the summit is to traverse the lower slopes and make our way to the higher. Remember, the lower slopes are not inferior. They are a necessary part of the journey. But we should keep in mind that they are only stages, not the goal. Attachment to the fruits of lower stages saps our enthusiasm and motivation for climbing to the higher ones. So Nachiketa's story is our own story. And this story goes like this. Nachiketa was a sincere young seeker, full of enthusiasm, courage, and honesty. Because these are the qualities needed for a seeker: enthusiasm, courage, and honesty. He practiced what he believed with perfect accuracy. His father, known throughout the land for his knowledge, riches, and generosity, had already reached the peak of worldly success. Now he was interested in securing a higher place in heaven. So he began a practice consisting of meditation, recitation of the scriptures, and making a fire offering the yajna. In its last phase, the practice required that he give away his wealth to learned and the needy people. Nachiketa, 8-year-old young boy, was fascinated with the essence of this practice, which demanded that his father give everything, his entire wealth and his dearest possessions, including his ego. But the young seeker, Nachiketa, noticed that his father showed signs of strong attachment to his wealth. In those days, cows were like cash. And his father was giving away old, sick cows, which were virtually useless, and keeping the healthy ones. He also noticed that his father was becoming irritable. So Nachiketa wished the best for his father and wanted him to complete the practice in all its purity and fullness. He wanted his father to do the practice genuinely rather than just put a show. So Nachiketa humbly tried to encourage his father to overcome his attachments. Nachiketa also assumed his father would give him to an enlightened spiritual teacher to guide his sadhana. Children were considered to be the property of their parents in those days. So he went to his father and asked to whom he would be given. His father made no answer but showed signs of agitation. Nachiketa persisted, asking this question again and again. His father burst out angrily, "I give you to death." Nachiketa took his response positively. Instead of getting upset, he began to contemplate. From his pure and tender heart came a powerful voice. Parents always want the best for their children. Today my father has handed me over to death. There must be something auspicious for me in this meeting. He eventually arrived at the door of Yamaraj, the king of death. Yamaraj was not in, so he waited patiently for 3 days and 3 nights without food or water. When Yamaraj returned and found the young man waiting outside, he said, "O Brahman, I bow to you. May God bless you. Since you have been waiting for me for 3 days and 3 nights without eating or drinking, you may ask for 3 boons." Nachiketa replied, "May my father regain his peace of mind. May he become cheerful and free from anger. Upon my return from here, may he acknowledge me as his son." That was the first boon he wanted. Yamaraj blessed Nachiketa with the first boon and asked him what he wanted for his second boon. Nachiketa replied, "I have heard that in heaven there is no fear or old age. People are free from hunger and thirst. I know you know the science of fire, the yajna, that unveils the mystery of heaven. I ask that you Teach that to me. You can see that the first boon he wanted for his father, the second boon he wanted for the people. Because majority of the people, they want to go to heaven, to heavenly abode. Yamraj happily imparted this knowledge. After Nachiketa had received and absorbed the second boon, the master gave him permission to ask for the third boon. He made the following request. In regard to a person who has left the world, there are many hypotheses. One is that the soul continues to exist after. Another is that it does not. While studying and practicing under your discipline, may I gain this knowledge. This brief request encompasses several interrelated questions actually. Who we are? Where did we come from? Is it possible to stop the cycle of death and birth once and for all? After this cycle ends, do we continue to exist in some form? Is it possible to be immortal? And what is our relationship with the absolute truth? What are the practical techniques to become immortal? That's what he wanted to know. Yamaraj replied, even people living in heaven are not clear on this. It is almost impossible to communicate through words or even through thoughts. Yamraj said, ask for anything except this, for your third boon. He said, ask for long life, several children, unlimited wealth. I will grant you all. Ask for land the size of your imagination. Ask to live as long as you want to live. But Nachiketa, do not insist on this boon. Nachiketa remained unmoved by these temptations. Yamraj's heart melted because Nachiketa had passed the last test. And his master gladly imparted the knowledge of immortality and systematically taught his disciple the method of identifying the pranic forces and the channels through which they flow. He explained how these energy channels become entangled. He also explained that our desires and attachments are what bind us to this earthly body. The sages have used Nachiketa's story as a model for the spiritual journey. The journey which each and every one of us are making. The first boon tells us that before we set our foot on the path, we must make peace within ourselves and with others. So external peace and internal peace is very important to start this journey. A person struggling with interpersonal relationships has no time or energy for higher pursuits. This is what that first boon is all about. The first boon also implies that mere intellectual knowledge is not enough to improve the quality of our interpersonal relationships. That's why we often see highly intelligent people with very poor relationships. Despite our good intentions and our knowledge of philosophy and psychology, many of us become victims of our attachments, our desires, anger, greed, ego, and fear. We may be good at diagnosing others' problems, but we fail to recognize ours, which is why we react abruptly and treat our loved ones badly. This creates an environment of tension and unhappiness. As all of us know from personal experience, these problems wreak havoc in both body as well as our mind, disrupting the normal functions of pranic energies which hold the body and mind together. Next time you get upset or angry or anxious, pay attention to your breathing. There is a direct link between problems of this sort and energy blockage at the two lowest chakras. That is, tension in our interpersonal relationships causes disturbance in the energies of the first two chakras, which in turn causes the organs in our pelvic and abdominal region to become weak and diseased. Much of our consciousness is occupied by the issues relating to the first two chakras. And what are those? The Mooladhara chakra and Swadhisthana chakra. And because of these issues, there's a little time or energy for exploring the wealth that lies in the higher chakras. So we just stay stuck. Overcoming these problems by imbibing the wisdom contained in Nachiketa's first boon is the goal of the initial stage of practice. So in other words, peace inside, peace internally, and peace externally also. Very important. We have embarked on the first stage of the spiritual journey when we begin to cultivate a positive and composed mind. The first prerequisite for a higher spiritual practice and understanding is an uncomplicated mind. One which knows the value of a simple and relaxed life and has formed the habit of forgiving and forgetting. That's why that very simple saying by our Guruji, Sadgi mein sukh, dikhave mein dukh. Okay? We all look for sukh. It's only in simplicity. If we are caught up in our thinking, busily nursing grudges and complexes, it is impossible to live peacefully. And to remove the grudges, it takes only one side. Sometimes we think that the other person has to agree with us. No. We can remove the grudges from our own mind. even without having the other person known about it. Under the sway of a chaotic mind, we lose our decisive power. And we waste our time in random thoughts and actions. We have no way of knowing where our duties lie. And unless we learn to pay off our karmic obligations by performing our duties selflessly, lovingly, and skillfully. These are the three things we got to always remember. Duties we must do, but are we doing it selflessly, lovingly, and skillfully or not? We will be caught in the cycle of birth and death. So the techniques for cultivating a clear, composed mind have been elaborated from different perspectives in a number of scriptures. In those scriptures, the rishis give us the tools for introspection, self-analysis, and self-observation. No matter which scripture we pick up, we see the help given by these sages to us. Especially in the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, which is very condensed and direct scripture. Only 196 lines. And some of the lines are not even full sentence. There are people who have memorized the whole Yoga Sutras. But I would suggest instead of memorizing, let's live those principles. We are all familiar with certain don'ts and certain do's. That means certain restraints and certain observances given by Rishi Patanjali. He called them yam and the niyams, the first two steps on the ladder of this spirituality. These principles are as indispensable as food and breath. For whom? A person who wants to rise up. What are the restraints? Quickly, let's go through it. There are 5 principles: non-violence, non-lying, non-stealing, non-sensuality, and non-possessiveness. Practicing them helps us become healthy and civilized members of our families as well as communities. So not just only we get the benefit of it, our families do, and the society does too. They cut down on distractions and reduce the problems we create for ourselves and also others. Consequently, we are not a threat to others, nor are others a threat to us. That's how the peace arises. There is no ground for fear. When there's no fear, peace begins to grow. Because peace and fear, they are two opposite ends of the same spectrum. And the second one is the niyam, the observances. They are also 5. Purity, contentment, self-discipline, self-study, and surrender to God. Shauch, Santosh, Tap, Swadhyay, Ishwar, Pranidhan. These 5 principles open new channels for physical, mental, and spiritual nourishment. By purifying our thoughts, speech, and actions, we prepare ourselves to greet the divine who resides within us. That divinity is right there in the inner recesses of this temple of ours. Contentment gives us freedom from anxiety, because anxiety is an enormous drain in our energy. Anxiety does not let us sleep. Anxiety does not let us even do simple tasks properly. Self-discipline frees us from laziness. Self-study allows us to identify our strengths and weaknesses. It also includes study of scriptures and even the mantra repetition. And Ishwar Pranidhan, the surrender to God, prevents us from becoming egoistic. And it deepens our connection with the divine when we surrender to God, the higher power. It is through surrender the divine grace flows into our lives. Just like they say that water flows from the top to down. These 10 yams and the niyams help us become simple, gentle, humble, disciplined, and kind. And these are the characteristics that are prerequisite to self-transformation. And by embracing them, we prepare a solid foundation for whatever specific practice we undertake. Practicing these restraints and the observances in a mild manner does not guarantee that we will achieve freedom from the subtle traces of our karmas. That's why Rishi Patanjali talked about it. He said, Pratishtanam. We got to be very firmly established in these principles, not in a weak manner, firmly established. The subtle impressions stored in our unconscious mind are the direct cause of our personality traits. Powerful tendencies such as jealousy, greed, anger, and desire originate from the unconscious and are nourished by it. A passive practice is not powerful enough to neutralize them. So that's why we have to be firmly, when we say that truthfulness is one of the principles, so no matter what, we have to follow that with our words, with our thoughts, with our actions. And the same thing goes for others also. That is why for a deeper level of mental and behavioral cleansing, the Yoga Sutras prescribe the following. Cultivate an attitude of friendship for those who are happy. Because often when we see somebody happy, we just become jealous, or we try to find faults or the flaws in that person. So Rishi Patanjali said, think that they are your friend, Maitri. Then he said, cultivate compassion for those who are suffering, Karuna. Don't start saying that it's because of their own karmas they are suffering. Those principles are for ourselves. If something bad happens to me, I should remember there must be something I have done that I'm suffering right now. But if somebody else is suffering, we should have the attitude of a compassion, karuna. Cultivate an attitude of cheerfulness toward those who seem to be virtuous. Cheerful. Mudita. Because often when somebody is doing something good, we start finding faults. Be happy. Cultivate an attitude of indifference towards those who do not seem to be virtuous. Don't put your foot in the mud. Mud will splatter all over you. That is called upeksha. So, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Remember these key terms to clean your own mind. This upward journey will be easier if we have these attitudes firmly placed in our practice. The ego is the root of all problems. We all know that. And it doesn't want to let go of its negative tendencies, no matter how degrading or base they are. Because all tendencies and sanskars nourish the ego. And not only that, the ego delights in their presence. These negative tendencies, including anger, hatred, jealousy, greed, possessiveness, attachment, and desires, are part of the ego's wealth. Ego loves it. Not knowing how to handle its self-created misery, the ego reaches for faults in others. So instead of focusing on ourselves, we focus on others. The most striking exhibition of ego is jealousy. Not only do we want to be happy and virtuous, we also want others to know that we are happy and virtuous. And further, we do not want anyone to be happier or more virtuous than we are. If we perceive that someone's happiness or virtue is greater than ours, the ego expresses itself in the form of animosity. Conversely, if someone appears to us to be more miserable or less virtuous than we are, the ego expresses itself by feeling superior. These tendencies are a breeding ground for mental anguish. And a result, we lose our peace of mind. And when the mind is not peaceful, it cannot do any kind of a sadhana. A person with a disturbed and a confused mind cannot focus on the main goal of life. And in the light of a composed and tranquil mind, we see things clearly. This four-fold technique given by Rishi Patanjali is known as Yoga Chit Prasadhanam. Mind purifier. See, just like if we want to purify, clean our home, We use the vacuum cleaner or we use certain detergents. So this way, these rishis, they have given us a very clear and concise technique to purify our mind. Chit prasadhanam. Yamraj blessed Nachiketa by promising that his father would regain his peace of mind. And he will lose his temper also, anger, and he will become cheerful because this is the boon Nachiketa asked for his father. So this blessing implies that any aspirant can attain the wisdom which will enable them to cultivate healthy interpersonal relationships and live a fulfilling life. In practical terms, this blessing is acquired by cultivating the habits of letting go of anxieties and injuries, real or imagined. Forgetting and forgiving is the only way to sleep well at night. We must learn to communicate with each other in a loving, helpful, healthy way. We need to accept others the way they are. We often want to change people. Everybody is trying to change others. But in order to be happy and peaceful, we need to change ourselves. So practicing the fourfold method of purifying the mind in conjunction with the yam and the niyams, those restraints and the observances which I talked about, enables us to do this. So remember those 5 yams and the 5 niyams and the 4 attitudes, that is our wealth as a practitioner. In addition, the first stage of spirituality also consists of specific and methodical practices that enable us to know ourselves at the level of body, breath, and mind. This is what yoga sadhana is. In the initial stages of our search, when we are neither strong in our convictions, nor we are familiar with the unconscious contents of our mind, it is advisable to embrace a balanced path. And what is that path? That path combines elements of Karma Yoga, the yoga of selfless action, Gyan Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of love and devotion, and Hatha Yoga, where we learn how to take care of this body. This balanced path is known as Raj Yoga. And the yam and the niyam and the 4 purifiers for mind are integral part of it. Regardless of differences in physical capacity, emotional maturity, and intellectual acuity, each of us can begin these practices at our own level. We can get into a routine, and that routine itself becomes our sadhana. But for others, or the serious students, this is not enough. We want to know the mystery of life after death. We want to know this unseen. We want to know, does the soul really go to heaven or hell? Or if so, does it continue its journey afterwards? The sages outline the entirely different set of practices which form the intermediate stage of sadhana. So, what I talked about today is just the first stage. Next week, we'll continue from there. And I will explain that intermediate stage also, which Yamraj explained to Nachiketa. And after insistence from Nachiketa, what he told him about the final stage also. But as practitioners, we should, sure, we have the curiosity to know those two also. But are we firmly established in the first stage or not? Is our mind getting more and more pure or not? Each day we got to reflect on our own mind. Is it calm? Is it pure? Can it focus right away or not? This is just the first stage. Are we living peacefully at work, at home, or wherever we are? Inside also, outside also. This is the first stage on this journey. So I'm going to stop it here and start with the intermediate stage next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.